welcome everybody. As we can all see and by the introduction from Jordana, I am so pleased to be joined today by a panel of very inspirational pioneers in the impact space. Each come with their unique view, with their own mission to drive positive change, and even more so, looking to establish new industry norms. I'm Kerry Bannigan, founder of the Conscious Fashion Campaign, an initiative in collaboration with the United Nations Office for Partnerships, where we coordinate advocacy, education, and engagement of fashion industry stakeholders to implement responsible business practices that are mindful of social, economic, and environmental impact. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us.
Hi.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I am going to kick off with you, Bandana, and would then love to hear from each of you. Bandana, can you please share a brief about your work at the intersection of fashion and social entrepreneurship?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful. I live in Bali right now. I moved away from Bombay, my bustling city, 4 years back. I worked with Vogue magazine for 13 years. And when I moved to Bali, my whole life changed from very conspicuous consumption. My dialogue changed to conscious consumption. And at the same time, I started researching Gandhian philosophies and Gandhian philosophy and principles that we could perhaps use in our luxury and fashion business. And we can indeed. And so my quest thereafter was to be a speaker and to write about sustainability in terms of ideology, especially related to the Gandhian philosophy of ahimsa, which is non-violence, aparigraha, which means anti-greed, sarvodaya, which means welfare for all. And we can go on and on about it, but Gandhi sort of gave me a certain direction in the jungles of Bali. And here I am very grateful to be part of Fashinnovation conference. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. And what an inspirational journey that you have actually taken. And some would even say a bit of a courageous one at a different turn now in your career. So I look forward to delving into that a little bit with you shortly. Yash?
Hi, Kerry. Thank you. And namaste for having me here. So we at Jaipur Rugs always believe that a man needs to live a dignified life, and we in India always observed, especially 40 years ago, this discrimination on the basis of caste, creed, gender, and we realized that who are we as human beings to discriminate people? And that's when we wanted to start this journey. And now we work with our founder, who's known as the Gandhi of the modern carpet industry, to connect the poorest of poor with the richest of richest, and just stop seeing through the lens that world has poverty, start wearing the lens that we see everyone in this world as potential. And that's what inspires me to bring the idea of potential in the fashion and trend industry and co-create and connect with the larger audience to heal the organizations and people.
Thank you so much. Samata, please share with us about your work at the intersection of fashion and social entrepreneurship.
Sure. Well, again, I echo everyone else by saying thank you for having me and allowing me to be part of this conversation. I am the CEO of an organisation called Red Carpet Green Dress, which was started by Susie Amos Cameron and James Cameron when they were going to the Oscars to celebrate the Avatar movie. And as very passionate environmentalists, they wanted to use that opportunity to create a conversation on the red carpet about sustainability and the impact that fashion has on the environment and on people around the world. And so our organisation really is about taking dialogue and creating action within the fashion industry. We're given so many incredible opportunities to showcase sustainable design, but what's really important to us is about taking moments like a red carpet or moments like an influencer or a celebrity endorsing sustainability and turning that into real change, you know? And so that's what we're really passionate about, creating spaces and creating dialogue and creating spotlights for sustainability and environmentalism where they weren't really before, you know. So I'm really excited to be in this conversation and to really learn kind of what everyone else is doing and to talk about the work that we're doing as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Rahul?
Thank you, Kerry, for having me here. And I'm really honored to be here. So as a brand, as a design house, we always believed in an idea of inclusive growth. Obviously, where we look at how we can impact, lives, how we can include more people in the process of designing things. So we often say, as a brand philosophy, instead of seeing primary objective of fashion as consumption, we seek to create some garments which create participation. So the participation happens from weavers, from craftsmen. So today we employ more than 1,000 people all across India, and not just employ them. This also gives them power to dream, and at the same time, the art which they practice, that also allows them to push boundaries. So it's quite like overall satisfying thing to able to work with a team which is so wonderful.
And the fact that you create some of the most beautiful collections out there also just adds to it all for us, because you're using the power of beautiful creations and then being able to empower people behind the scenes and bring that story to the forefront. So I'm excited to talk about that with you shortly also. Now, Samata, congratulations on the recent launch of the Red Carpet Green Dress Challenge.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Very excited to see that. Now, can you tell us how the organization is placing a spotlight on sustainable design solutions? And in particular with the challenge, you're now placing a spotlight on the female garment workers.
Yes. So I'm so excited about that, because Red Carpet started as a design contest. That's how it began. It was about connecting with the design community and giving them a creative challenge. I think there's nothing designers like more than a challenge. And so the idea of weaving sustainability into their work was one that was set upon them. But this year, we wanted to resurrect the contest because we really wanted to stay connected with the design community that have been such a big supporter of the movement for so long. But we knew we couldn't do that without first addressing the issues of fashion being quite a destructive force when it comes to the textile side of the industry. We've been spending a lot of time talking to luxury brands, talking to designers, and one of their challenges has always been, well, we can't find sustainable textiles. We can't access sustainable textiles. We want more sustainable textiles. And we're aware that textiles as an industry is extremely damaging. I mean, we're producing, I think it's 98 million tons, with millions and millions of tons of textiles using non-renewable resources right now, polyester and so on and so forth. And these aren't part of a circular economy. These aren't solutions that are meant to be part of nurturing our planet. They're solutions which are ultimately going to be a destructive force upon our planet. And so we wanted to, first of all, create an opportunity for designers to use sustainable textiles through the contest. So they have to use 3 textiles that we've presented them with, and they're all fully biodegradable. We partnered with Tencel Luxe to do that. So they're kind of using wood fiber. I mean, it's so innovative. So we're giving the designers the textiles that they've been looking for. But at the same time, we're using the contest to raise funds for garment workers in Bangladesh and Myanmar, because with all that's happening with this COVID pandemic, we have groups of women, particularly because we know they're such a huge part of the garment workforce, who are extremely vulnerable. Either they have lost their jobs and so they don't have that income coming in anymore. They have themselves to support their children, their families as well. Or they're in situations where they're working in these factories and they have absolutely no protective equipment whatsoever. So we're fundraising via 2 NGOs. One of them is called the Awaj Foundation, and they're doing great work in Bangladesh, getting funds to these women so that they can still survive and live in the middle of a pandemic. And at the same time, we're working with the Fifth Pillar in Myanmar to do the same thing for these particular groups. And we're also providing them with the PPE masks, so that if they are having to go back into the factories and work in these super cramped conditions, they can at least feel a little bit safer than they're being forced to right now. So it's an exciting contest because we call it the Sustainable Design Contest that's championing hope for designers and hope for makers as well. So yeah, I'm super excited about it.
Thank you so much. Rahul, your work embodies beautiful creations whilst empowering craftsmen. Please share more how your business ecosystem is built on the fundamentals of empowerment, employment, and environment.
I think like any designer, we always keep on looking out for inspiration. So for me, my idea behind sustainability does not just get limited to getting biodegradable fibers or getting natural textiles. I think it goes beyond that. When you look at culture, when you look at employment, a country like India, which has got a huge population, so that is where I really say, like, most important thing for us is what is the purpose behind creating yet another outfit. So purpose is always about inclusiveness, about creating something which is very environmentally neutral. At the same time, because of purpose, we follow a process which is often very, very slow. So on average, like every garment takes more than 1,000 hours to create, human hours. So it means every garment allows that much extra time of participation from the people who work on that outfit. And for me, sustainability is all about finding rhythm with nature. It's just that human consumption, human production has been too fast for our nature in terms of the way nature can create those resources back for us. So if we slow down the entire process of creating things, we will able to follow a rhythm, and rhythm is everything, whether we breathe or heartbeat or everything around us. So we just follow a rhythmic process of slow fashion, and then finally process drives purpose drives process, and that's how we create participation and the final result product, which is usually only 10% of like entire ecosystem. It's almost like tip of iceberg, which is visible to the world, how product looks like, but what goes behind it is really, really important. So in that way, I think we are getting more and more slower as times comes by. After the COVID-19, the natural reaction would have been to create things faster, maybe utilize mechanized ways. But I think now what we have decided as a company, we are going down even more slower route. Now what is going to come out from a studio is going to be even more slower clothes. So that's a commitment. And I think right now also, as I talk about it, in a lot of villages, work has started for last 1 month, and more than 40% people are back with the work and everything. So China again started, so which is a great thing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Yash, I would love to just talk to you for a moment, please. Everything that you're doing with your work is to preserve the timeless craftsmanship of Indian artisans, whilst also enabling economic prosperity. Oh my God, I'm stopping for a moment, 1 second. Enabling economic prosperity among destitute communities. Tell us more about the foundation's pillars focused on entrepreneurship, leadership, and even more so, social development.
Sure. So our foundation is basically about the holistic living of an individual, irrespective of the spectrum from where the individual comes from. And we have divided these three fundamental as engage, develop, and sustain. And so the whole idea of JRF, Jaipur Rugs Foundation, is to identify the most vulnerable and the most marginalized communities in the most rural, remote corners of India, engage with them so that we can develop their creative capacities, because we believe that each and every individual is gifted with the creative side. And if we integrate the creative side of multiple individuals and take it across the border, that's when we create a cultural capital. And that's why we start by engaging with communities and then developing their capabilities as per the global demand, as per the businesses. And what the definition of business that we have defined for Jaipur Rugs is business is next to love. It is the creator and preserver of human civilization. And the idea is about connecting the two ends of the world, the knowns with the unknowns. And that's all we do through the developed vertical of foundation in developing their leadership capabilities, their skills, their upskilling through them. And then finally, the most important aspect is the sustainability vertical of JRF. Right from our own life, like even our relationships are not sustainable, our health is not sustainable, our finances are not sustainable the way we have designed our life. So we want to integrate in a way that it has to be a socio-economic transformational growth of an individual. So we provide them with a very robust market throughout the 60 countries around the world now. And these customers that we engage with are not the regular customers. entrepreneurs. They are all conscious art connoisseurs who believe in the art and who want to, like celebrate the craftsmanship and celebrate the human dignity that goes to create those craftsmanship. And the another vertical that we have realized, and with the COVID, we are more strong now, is that the fact that social innovation has a very integral part to sustain the future the way we are about to see in the coming post-COVID world, because things are so much fragile the way we, like before that we never thought that how the designs would come up. And now with the social innovation vertical in our sustain pillar, we have decided to develop these weavers as designers and the global designers at par, and let them co-create with designers like Rahul and create the most authentic products of the world. So that's how we are trying to bring a holistic way of living, both in our lifestyles as well as the products we create, and that's how we sustain the craftsmanship. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Bandana, you are surrounded by some fellow panelists here that are driven by incredible passion, will, and relentlessness. And it's incredible what each of them are doing. Now, from your perspective, how can society empower fashion entrepreneurs to build a new paradigm where social values and smart business are interconnected?
Well, in my very frugal opinion, when you say, how can society help? What if I change the question and say, how can you as an individual help empower entrepreneurship in fashion? Then when it's directed to me, it is very evident that world over, there's a proliferation of younger brands, smaller brands that do not believe in the ideology of bigger is better. And what that means is when they start out small, they plant the seeds of sustainability from day one. The ideals of sustainability grows with their business plan. Typically how these businesses are run, they create a tribe of their own, loyalists who share the same ethics. They worry about fair wages. They worry about a certain sense of, the actual reality of transparency and the supply chain that is evident to them, that is realistic to them. I feel as consumers, when you talk about society, it's you and me. We are the consumers. Let us support the creators who believe in this path and in this journey, which is really not about bigger is better. We've seen the whole world collapse. The biggest companies are suffering. It doesn't matter if you're a multi-billion-dollar company right now, right? How does it matter? But in essence, for me personally, because I've moved to Bali to pursue my activism on sustainable fashion. And we talk a lot about circularity, circular fashion. And we know what that is. It's not linear. It's not take, make, waste. It's circular. What about circularity in creativity? I think we need to understand that we need to empower young entrepreneurs in fashion who have incredible strength to socially empower cultures, especially when you come from countries that are artisanally led. They're rural economies of handicrafts people, whether it's India, Indonesia, where I live. I think consumers need to be able to engage in this whole story, the holistic story of fashion production, and support, promote, buy, celebrate the younger designers who do not belong to conglomerates, who have no support on a global scale. Let's look into our own regions and see who can be supported locally. I think the idea of globalization is pretty defunct. It failed us. We see this during COVID-19. It's failed us phenomenally. So let's celebrate our region. Let's celebrate the young entrepreneurial spirit that comes out of the fashion industries within our environment. Before we step out, it's not that we don't want to be inclusive of different countries, but this, now that we are bound by, travel bans, we are in our own zones, so to speak. Let us look into our own backyards and support what is germinating in our own lands.
Thank you. This really has given us a moment to appreciate localized talent across the sectors, whatever they may be in the whole chain of the fashion sector. And thank you so much for highlighting that. Rahul, I would love to hear from you, please, and then Samata for you to add to this. Why is it important to engage couture in sustainable strategies for achieving transformation?
I think the idea behind the way fashion started, it was like before pre-industrialized time when entire world was moving in a very beautiful rhythmic way. We had like certain amount of beauty, art, and we were celebrating it. Now what happened, like certain companies, they make 52 collections a year. Why do we need every week a new part of clothing? Fashion is a great thing to achieve happiness, to able to show yourself what you love and all that, but there has to be a way of creating something which lasts longer, something which has got far more beauty, artisanal beauty, and at the same time, it's something like that which stays in your wardrobe for a really long time. And that is where I really feel couture is something which was far more. And one more thing which is really important, like some time back, somebody was asking me, in India, people buy a lot of clothing based on occasion, where they're going to wear it. That's a great model. I think fashion has to go back to its model of need based idea. You need that outfit, you please order it and I'm going to make it, rather than me producing 500 or 5 million pieces, then advertising it again and again, pushing sales, then after that putting discounts. Because ultimately, even a t-shirt, if it costs $10 today, for future generation, it's going to be far more expensive, because the amount of resources which are going into that clothing is not related to what MRP it is reflecting right now. So, in that way, I really feel like we have to slow down, and couture gives us one way where designers or companies are able to express what they really believe in. And at the same time, artisans or all the craftsmen, they get included in the process of making those things. And finally, I think it also definitely a great answer to slow down things, because in fashion industry we are producing way too many clothes than we need. We have been buying too many clothes than what we need. So I think we need to reassess our needs, and we should be focusing on our needs rather than greeds. So that's something which is really important.
Samata, could you please add to that?
Yeah, sure. There's quite a few things that were addressed that I feel I should kind of draw attention to. I think one of them, I think, is when you talk about engaging with couture in this kind of desire to have a conversation that's centered on sustainability. Couture is part of the fashion industry. And for me, sustainability has to be inclusive of all the sectors in the fashion industry to be truly sustainable. We talk about inclusivity and we talk about sustainability. And even in this conversation, I think it's important to define what it means to us and to also honor and respect what it means to other people. When we talk about couture, it could be anything from the slow artisanal focus on making something that takes time and cherishing that item. But for some, couture is also about the story of the people who made those garments. Who are they? What are their stories? Why are they invisible? How can we shine a light on those? And for other people, it is the materials as well. Materials is so impactful. It's such a huge part of the conversation. So I think couture, to me, we've worked with brands from Louis Vuitton to Vivienne Westwood to Armani. And I'll be honest, one of the things I've always encountered is this idea and this conversation that comes from them that we're not sure we can go out in this project. We're not sure we want to put ourselves out and associate with this project because there are all of these things that we're not doing and we will be shamed because of them. And so for me, integrating luxury brands, integrating couture brands into this dialogue is important because we all have value to add to this conversation. And we have to remove this element of shaming people whose idea of sustainability does not exactly match ours. Now, that is not the same as saying someone who's greenwashing is doing a sustainable initiative. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that in order to be inclusive, we have to allow people to have their spaces in the room. And some of us will occupy bigger spaces. I've been in this field for 10 years. I've worked with designers from over 21 countries for our project. I am very, very, very in love with sustainability as a space. But I will welcome other brands and other individuals into this space when we can transfer knowledge and share. With Red Carpet Green Dress, we have couture designers from Ghana who've won the contest, and they've taught us so much about the natural dye system in Accra, in Tamale. So I think there's so much for us to learn in this space from couture and that love of making and that passion that goes into doing something slowly. And I think the other quick point I wanted to raise is we're talking about completely different sectors here. You're talking about couture when you're saying slow, considered, we need to slow that down. But there is a need to address how we dress a growing global population sustainably. You know, the way the high street is working right now, it isn't sustainable. We can't be churning out these collections at the rate that we're doing. But also when we're talking about sustainability, and I'm talking to young people who are 19, 20, they're like, I can't afford these brands that are saying they're sustainable. I don't have that kind of pocket money. So we need to also discuss how we make mainstream fashion that is sustainable more accessible to the global masses, so they can admire couture and they can save and they can value it, but they can buy something on their level too and be part of the dialogue. So, I mean, that's something I feel quite strongly about as an individual and as the CEO of Red Carpet Green Dress.
Thank you both. I feel like we need to have another panel just on all of that. That was incredible. And thank you so much for just highlighting there's so much perspectives in this very complex tier of things to look at. So it was great to hear that from you both. Thank you. Now, Bandana, we all know, for good or for bad, the fashion industry is one of the leaders in cultural capital. What are some of the best communication practices for brands that do place human dignity and environmental protection at the core of their business?
Well, yes, I've been in the media business for a while, so I can tell you that for years on end, we created a huge fallacy that something fashionable began and ended on a ramp with a model wearing it. And the narrative continued to be that. And we forgot that there were hundreds of hands and invisible faces and voiceless people that created many, many things of beauty for our industry. But that narrative was always missing from whether they are mainstream media, newspapers, you name it. I think the way we can change as the new communication practices moving forward is to, open the window, draw the curtain, and see what's behind the product. And, let me just sort of mimic what Rahul talked about, because we've spoken about this several times. But in this whole creative circularity that I'm talking about, I believe that there are 4 Ps that have to be connected. So there's of course, it's the product, but there's people, there's processes, and there's a purpose. Now, our storytelling from the media world is incomplete so far. We've only been edifying and glorifying A, the designer, and B, the product. But every other system in between has been obliterated from the consumer's eyes. I would not know where to start. So now the narrative for editors all over the world, in whichever platform they work in, we've got to go behind the scenes. We've got to show them the processes, because I'll tell you, we are walking into a world where we are going to have consumers who will ask about the ethics of your fabric. When I buy something, who made it? Was there fair wages involved? Which part of the culture did it come from? Was there cultural appropriation? These are words that have suddenly taken life because of the absurd level of disingenuity that we have imposed on a fashion that became so faceless, that it was only about beauty for beauty's sake, that it became inhumane, undemocratic, and inaccessible. So the narrative, storytelling in the fashion world, whether it's the written word or it's digital, has to change. It has to go behind the scenes and give us a complete picture. Then we respect, then we understand, why is it that I choose to buy this? Because that creativity cycle is, I know that it touches many hearts and many people just like me who are creating the things of beauty that I consume.
Thank you so much. Yash, anything to add?
Absolutely. Like, I completely agree what Bandana says. And that's how, when we decided that communication is not complete till the time you can't experience it. and how do you experience the way you communicate? And that's when we decided to open up ourselves, our businesses, our processes, and our systems. And we created a program called Knots of Compassion, wherein we invite our consumers, our vendors, our people from all over the world and ask them and come with us and stay with our viewers, just experience everything, right from how the wool is sourced, how it is dyed, where it is dyed, who dyed them, what is the impact. The reason of doing that, what we have realized that comes forward to us is that the people gets to meet the real heroes who makes it. And once they get to meet them, they get to be with them, they get to just experience the way they are, they themselves feel as heroes. And that's why we realized that we don't need a marketing and branding department, because we have the brand ambassadors, the consumers, the makers who create the environment of the way they have lived that communication, that experience. So we call it as getting the first-hand experience makes the communication more stronger, more robust, and more realistic for the brands in future, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So as we come to wrap up this panel, I would love each of you to share, kicking off with you, Samata, if you don't mind. What is your advice to those seeking to transform the industry, and especially now more than ever, those that look to build back better?
My advice is really to look at all of the agents within this industry as your equal, as your peer, and as your partner. I think when we look at the structures that exist within the fashion industry, we know that this is a very disproportionately unfair system. But my challenge is often when we talk about the groups that are most vulnerably impacted, we look at them as these kind of, the language that's often used is this poor victim. And I think that that is part of playing a role in positioning people as lesser than or greater than. And, you know, I object to that quite heavily. I see the role that everyone plays within this industry as being equally significant. And so every collaboration that we do, every partnership we go into, we look at all of the stakeholders in the room. If I'm in a meeting with somebody, I'm asking the people who are quiet. I'm asking the young people in the room, what are your thoughts on this? What value do you think you could add to this conversation? Because I think that's where that real inclusivity is. And I think one of the reasons that this particular conversation is, I think, really significant right now is, look at what's happening in America right now. You know, look at what has been triggered in the States right now and how people are reacting around that. I think there's a huge shift right now in the world around how can we show that we see people as equal? How can we treat people as equal individuals of this society? And we need to carry that spirit into all of the meetings we have, all of the conversations we have. Go with an open heart and give people the respect of being willing to teach you something. I feel like I learned so much from the young designers that enter our contest, as much as I learned from the luxury fashion houses that have hundreds of years of experience, because the young designers bring so much insight into what's happening in their world that I didn't even put my head around yet. And at the same time, the luxury fashion houses teach me so much about the craftsmanship and the making and all of that. So I think just approach people as if every single person can teach you something and that can enrich your journey, and give them that respect. And I think we'll glue together as a society so much more if we were able to do that.
I see lots of nodding heads from the panelists. Fashinnovation is giving us our call to end, but I just wanted to quickly see, Rahul, anything to add in those last few seconds?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, sustainability is a moving target. There's nothing like absolute for that. And what works in India, what is really needed for India may not be needed in Europe. So every designer needs to find their own way, their own idea, their own way of communication and producing things which are a better, product than ever before. So tomorrow has to be better than today. Same way, if we keep moving, one day we are going to have much better, planet to be on.
Brilliant. Thank you so much to you all. I see a couple of questions coming in. I'm just wondering on the timeline here. Fashinnovation, can you let us know if we can take this question, please?
Yes, you could take the question.
Great, thank you. So please let me know who would like to answer this first. Where do you see sustainability as a stance post all of what is taking place? Front seat or back seat?
I think if I just continue what I was saying, I think sustainability, people are realizing like what is happening right now is just our greed to consume more and more. More of the companies, even companies do have a idea of infinite growth with really finite resources. So I really feel right now, this is the time when people are quarantined, they are looking at the home, they are probably looking at their own wardrobes, realizing 90% of things they have, they may not have used them really fully. So I think in that way, whether it's buying behavior or even producing behavior, the way Bandana said, a bit of transparency of process and pricing needs to be brought on table by all the manufacturers, not just for fashion, but across the globe.
Bandana, anything to add to that question?
Yes, yes, of course. I think it's sustainability is going to be top of mind because during COVID times, we've realized that we can live frugally, that we can eat wholesome food at home, wear fewer clothes, not go shopping, and we survive and we actually feel quite nurtured and nourished. So I think the idea of how we want to deal with sustainability moving forward is something is very, very Gandhian. And let me go back to Mahatma Gandhi, where we've got to be personal activists for social change, which means that me as a consumer, you as a consumer, you've got to be an activist. As a designer, you've got to be an activist. As a creator, you've got to be an activist. So your whole perspective has to change. And if this time doesn't allow us to rejig not just what the systems are going to be like, because the systems are created by us and individual choices. So if we don't make those individual choices towards sustainable practices, then there's going to be no collective good. So let's take ownership about individual will and sustainability.
Thank you. Yash?
I'll just like to keep it simple and say that let the goodness, fairness, and most importantly, the love prevail. Everything else will follow.
Samata, could you wrap it up for us, please?
I would just say that we all wear clothes every single day. And so the idea that some people are part of the sustainable fashion conversation and some people aren't is a fallacy. If you're wearing clothes, you're part of the conversation and you have a role to play in ensuring that these clothes that we're all wearing are not just about making us look good, but they're making the world feel good and be better.
Brilliant. Thank you all so much for your insight. Please do not stop on the journeys and the missions that you are on. It is incredible. Bandana, we look forward to following you on your journey with your new move to Bali and seeing where we can all join you and continue to learn from you. So thank you all so much.